Greetings, everyone. This is Theo.
Hi, this is Nicole.
And we're W2, and we are here with the first episode of Cooped Up with W2. We want to basically begin this episode by giving you some background information in how we came up with the idea and why we think it's important for this particular podcast. And so, just like many of you, Nicole and I, we were cooped up in the house, doing our thing, wanting to get out and about, used to our normally daily routines. I was used to going in teaching classes, and she was used to doing business engagements. We were used to going out mostly grocery shopping together. But at this particular time, she was already at home recovering from an illness. And so I was going out doing grocery shopping. Then we would come back. I would sit around, watch TV, do my thing, and we get into this schedule. And it got me to thinking, I wonder what other couples are doing right now. How many of us have had changes in our schedule? How many of us see this stay-at-home order as a good thing? Whereas how many of us was like, man, I've never had to spend this much time around my spouse in a long time, and it's causing some challenges. And so I approached her about this idea about doing this podcast just so we could be a service. Maybe it could benefit us as a couple, but also benefit you. So I just want to have Nicole just share some thoughts on what she believes could be some of the benefits of this particular podcast and some things that we may cover in the future.
Well, if you know me, you know I don't do a lot of Facebook lives or videos, only if it, pertains to some food or things like that. But I thought that this would be a great opportunity to let people know that they're not alone, that the challenges that you are facing, that I'm facing, that is not exclusive. And if being transparent as much as we can on this podcast could help some have some be encouraged to gain some hope, gain some strategies, then I'm all about it. And so some of the things that we'll definitely be talking about is how spending the quality time, how individually and coming together, and our work time, like having those boundaries for our workspace as in our personal time, because that's a very real thing.
Yes.
And also our spiritual walk, making sure that we're taking this time. So there's so many different dynamics that we're going to be discussing throughout these podcasts. And so I hope you glean something from it as we are all learning through this process together.
So we just want to transition right now and just get into some specific topics. And the good news is, in the future, if you chime in after watching these videos, you'll be able to give us some insights, some inputs, some comments, some questions. And hopefully we'll take those in consideration in terms of future topics we're going to address in future episodes. So just sit back and enjoy this first episode of Cooped Up with W2.
Check it out.
So we just want to get into some specific topics. This isn't something that we've nailed down. We got to talk about this. We got to talk about this. But we just want to talk about some things that we think people may be going through and things that we've gone through this time. So I'm going to have Nicole start off with simply just giving you a glimpse of what her daily schedule may or may not look like throughout the week.
Well, I think it's been really important to keep to some type of routine because my nature is, to have some flexibility in my schedule, but for me to know that, okay, I'm going to start off my day with prayer, with some scripture. I'm just have a quiet space, and I'm sure a lot of you can attest to this, like we're able to hear the birds chirping in the morning time and to see the sunrise without trying to say, okay, I have to run do this, I got to eat breakfast, I got to do this. Still make sure that I have that routine that's going. Also, as much as I can, to exercise. It's so important that we don't, because if you know me, I'm a mover and a shaker. And so all of my moving and shaking was in the context of events or programming. And so I'm just like, okay, I got all this energy, so I'm to make sure I get that in as well. And my other routine is part of my routine is calling my family and friends, especially those who are in New York, is a daily thing, and so when I don't call, they kind of like shout like, "You didn't call us yesterday," and I'm just like, "I just want to give you a break." But I daily try to check in with somebody locally or family members, either via phone or messenger or just text to let them know what's going on. And then to make sure that I have time specific for my professional time as far as research. I'm even taking a class right now about business and sociology, just to keep my mind churning, to keep it elevating. And yeah, so those are the definites, and all the other stuff is just go with the flow, which I really enjoy because I haven't had that luxury in a long time.
Yeah, and for those who know me, Nicole concludes that the luxury for her is going for the flow. And, going with the flow, that's one of my philosophies. So it is not to say that I don't do well with structure, but I'm a go with the flow type guy. It's interesting that both professionally speaking, as far as being a professor as well as being a pastor, both our classes and services are now online. So a lot of my week is videotaping, and you'd be surprised at how much work that goes into it. I talk to my colleagues, we're doing more work now than we were when we were teaching in class in person. And so I'm normally in my office downstairs, our office area where you see the books and stuff, recording sermons, recording lectures. And you get that recorded and you think it's done, but now you got to edit it and you got to upload it to YouTube, and that takes time, and then all those things. So most of my week, a lot of my week is down there doing that stuff, preparing for Sunday service, preparing for classes, and then doing grading. And a lot of my free time is spent, surprisingly, I was playing the video games. You may see that later on, but I don't do a lot of gaming, but I have been Netflixing.
I think everyone could have said
yeah.
You've been Netflixing.
Yeah, been a lot of movies, watching Marvel cartoons right now, Avengers Assemble. And so I think it's important that even with this new schedule, one of my philosophies is always you work hard and you play hard. And so I've tried to honor my students by making sure I'm being the best online professor I can be. I tried to honor my parishioners by being the best online pastor I can be. But then when I get tired, I veg out, and I don't feel guilty about those things, and I think that's important. But it's not only important that Nicole and I and you and your spouse have your own separate schedules, that quality time apart. We're big on quality time apart. Mm-hmm. You also need quality time together. So, Nicole, what would be some of the things that we do that you've enjoyed, or some things that we were doing before COVID that we're still doing, some things you wish we'd get back to, or some things maybe we've introduced now that we have a little bit more time on our hands?
Well, some of the changes as far as like the routine is I would normally be the one like going to the grocery and running errands and all that stuff. And so now that's swapped. So Theo is the one. He's been the one going out and gathering the food. And
yes, gather hunter. Yes, that's
and bringing it in, and me saying, "Okay, go downstairs, get showered," because and I know some of us have been cleaning our groceries based on the recommendation of some things that we've seen on TV. So it's the routine has our swaps, like I said, the grocery shopping, some of the errands, and different things like that. So that's been a chuckle to me, and I love it. But as far as us together, I mean, we always enjoyed cooking together. If you don't know, my husband could throw down. Oh,
I got them skills, y'all.
yes.
I got them skills.
I mean, to the point that women at a church, they would ask for his recipe for like baked macaroni and cheese. Can anyone had his mac and cheese? Comment below.
Yeah,
and so definitely cooking together, praying together, just making sure that we stay connected. I didn't grow up watching the Avengers and all these shows, so I'm still like, what's that? Like, who's that? And so we definitely have been I've been going into his world as far as that, and chilling out, and not. I'm the early bird. And so now I get to kind of hang out with this night owl who could go to bed around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't. But just kind of going into his world a little bit as far as that goes. So I do enjoy that.
Yeah, and then also we've just been really helping each other out in terms of when we creatively want to take advantage of this new technology, you know, and so everyone's Zooming right now, and she actually got on Zoom before I got on Zoom, but if anyone who knows me, when I get on something, I want to learn all the ins and outs. So although she Zoomed before I did, I've Zoomed past her, no pun intended, in terms of capabilities. And so she may be like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this Zoom thing. And I'll show her some things. And she'll give me some ideas about some other stuff. Right now, you probably can't tell, but we have this cool light that she bought of a good friend of ours, Mark Lucky. Shout out to Mark Lucky, who's a photographer. Talked to Nicole about some lighting stuff. So she purchased this light. And one of our first projects in order to do this cooped up was we had to get our set, quote unquote, together. And I don't know if you saw in the trailer, you know, the cooped up trailer.
Do you know what that was?
We're actually inside a closet. And so,
oh man, I wish I could tell the backstory. So Theo, I'm downstairs in the living room, and I hear the like all this movement above our bedroom. I'm like, what is he doing? I'm like, okay, whatever. So I'm still doing what I'm doing, and then he's like, okay, babe, you know, we come in the room, you know, I'll get it cleaned up, and I'm like, all these disclaimers before I walked in there. And then I see all of our clothes from our closet on our bed. And then that's our first set. I didn't trip though. I did good.
No, you did good.
Yeah, I did good. Because I was like, you're going to put it back. He took it out, he put it back. It's all good.
Yeah, you know, because I had this vision of how do you graphically display the fact that we're literally cooped up. So we're shooting that inside the closet. And I was like, man, the lamp we had, the lighting wasn't working. And Nicole was like, well, I just got this lamp, you know, we haven't put it together yet, and so that was our first project. We put together this lamp, and you think it, and we both reading these instructions, and we were lost as all get out. Thank God for YouTube, going to YouTube, and then we get it figured out. And so I think that's been the blessing part, you know, as far as.
Oh, remember when you did your first Facebook Live?
Oh yeah, so that was another. I did a Facebook Live for Nicole. Nicole wanted to do a Facebook Live with her drumming, which she does, and it was interesting because it didn't cause a lot of tension, but it caused some tension in regards to, we had a discussion. She was like, what's the best way to do this? Because she wanted help. I thought she was asking me what's the best way to set up the camera for her to do this Facebook Live.
I didn't communicate well, y'all.
So she says, come upstairs and help me out. So I go up there. And I've never done Facebook Live to this date.
Dude, he's the communications professor. That blows my mind. Never done it.
So she showed me the button. She was like, just push this button in exactly 1 minute. Because I didn't know, I thought we were going to be practicing. Because she was talking about the lighting. So I assumed we were going to shoot this video, Facebook Live. I was going to give her some input on the lighting and stuff. And then later on, she can apply this input. No, she's going live in 1 minute. So she was like, push this button in a minute. And I'm like, but before she said that, she was like, Theo, what do you think is the best way to do this? And I clearly said the best way to do this is any part that doesn't involve me standing here holding this camera.
And do you remember what happened?
And then 5 minutes later, I'm standing there holding this camera for this whole shoot that she does, which is only probably about 15 minutes, was it?
No, it was longer. It was around 30 minutes.
I don't know if it was 30 minutes.
But you left. He positioned it.
Okay,
he left.
Okay, yeah.
The camera fell.
The camera fell. But the thing is, I hit the button. She showed me the button to push, and it said, hit this to start Facebook Live. I hit that button. And we're assuming it's going. Because I hit the button and the screen changed. So I'm like, oh, we're rocking and rolling. So I sat up there and end up this whole time. At the end, when I go to hit the stop button, the stop recording button, I hit that button and it started recording. And I was like, hold on. End up, she went on there and the people who were on there were waiting on her and it didn't happen. So I thought she was going to say, well, we'll reschedule. And people were, then next you know, although I
quit.
I wasn't supposed to hold the camera the first time. I'm holding the camera for a second full show. And I'm like, how did I get in this? How did I get in this?
Good husband.
And so, yeah, it shows you that when you're dealing with new technologies, we meant well, but there was some tension, but we worked through it because that's what couples do.
Yeah, because we've never had to do that and be that for each other previous to that. I didn't have, Theo's never been to any of my events and been the light person. Shout out to J4, Jalen, who's done photography for me and videography for me. To Janine also. But yeah, so I had him do this, not realizing I thrust them in this situation. But we're learning. And so I'm learning how to do stuff without his assistance per se. And if I do need his assistance, to make sure that we have a plan so we're on the same page.
Yes, and that's a good segue because most often for us, especially in this last, I can't even tell you how many weeks it's been since I always want to say 4 weeks, 5 weeks.
It's like, I think about 6,
but now we're probably
6.
going on close to 6 weeks. At least from the time we got the try to stay at home. At first it was you can only go to essential places. So from the time we got that, I guess it's probably about 6 weeks now. And the weeks are blurring. And it was amazing because Nicole and I had a conversation probably about 2 weeks ago. And I was sharing it with a good friend of mine. I said in this whole 4 or 5 weeks at that time, we hadn't had no drama. When I say no drama,
None.
We're talking about no disagreements. And we actually had a conversation about that. And I think that's important.
Dun, dun, dun.
No, before I get to that part. It's important that when things are going well, that you don't take those things for granted. Mm-hmm. Acknowledge those things, celebrate those things. It's almost like if anyone who's ever been sick and you pray to God for healing, even if it's of a common cold, and God heals us and we forget to thank God and we don't talk to God again until the next time we're sick. And we took that long period of time of health for granted. And so Nicole and I, we didn't want to take that good 5 weeks for granted as far as no drama or anything like that. And that's a good thing, because now you can...
Dun, dun, dun.
Because the last few days we've had more drama than we've had the last 5 weeks.
And I want to know, can anyone relate to that? Or it might be even opposite. Like maybe you were stepping on each other's toes at the beginning because you weren't used to being around each other. And now, like, okay, you get into a certain rhythm.
Yeah.
And so, but, dun, dun, dun.
Yes. And so the last few days, and the irony of it all is all of the tension that we've had, like our last two I'll call it 2.5 arguments. 2.5 arguments. Even though I don't know if we call it argument, more like we have like some spirited debates. They've all centered around this particular podcast. And so I think that's ironic, but there's also a beauty in that, and that we were cool up until a little tension on Sunday when we did a little. We were going over a script, and then on Wednesday when we shot some snippets that you haven't seen yet. You'll see a snippet.
It is gonna be fun.
Very shortly. And something, just normal communication stuff, and we chalk it up most often to miscommunication. And miscommunication happens for various reasons. And that miscommunication took us off track. Took us on where the GPS was saying do some recording. Next you know, we're off, and it's saying rerouting. And we just cut the GPS off, and we just went off road.
And I think it's important also to share that during this time when you're trying to juggle professional responsibilities, household responsibilities, that you're gonna be overwhelmed. Some of us may be feeling overwhelmed, like it feels like and it's just through that lens that miscommunication happens. And so I just want to encourage you, if you've been finding yourself not hearing each other, and I'm married to a professor in communications, y'all. Pray for me. And so I won't have him go through the different stages of effective listening. But I know the last one is definitely remembering everything that you heard. And so listening is an active thing.
Yes.
It has to be active. And so I just want to encourage us all that, as we're when we're talking to each other, that we really stop and that we really listen to the person to really process, understand. For me, I like to write things down. And so if that's you, make sure that you're writing it down so you have a reference to go back to, so you can remember, so you can minimize the miscommunication. Let's keep it real. We have so many things going on in our minds and also with our emotions.
Yeah, and that's important. So regardless of what the drama is, and we had, like I said, we had our moments all revolving around shooting this podcast. I think it's more important is, can you unpack what leads to that type of drama?
Mm-hmm.
And then can you work through it?
The genesis.
And so I know for us, it's often very practical. That first 5 weeks that was going well, that was legit. It wasn't fakery. It wasn't because we weren't being honest. We weren't being real with each other. We were doing our normal thing. But one thing that was existing was, or one thing that didn't exist is, we didn't have a joint effort to the magnitude of this podcast. So we had similar schedules. What we did jointly was the normal things we normally do jointly. Preparing for meals, entertainment, spending quality time together. You know how, yeah. All that stuff.
PG, sir. PG.
Okay, I keep that was pretty PG. That was pretty PG. So yeah, all that stuff. But in our history, as great as we do together, you got certain people who are great apart and people who are great together. We're greater together. W2, for those who don't know why we call ourselves W2.
Some people know.
Some people know. We won't go to long story, but the short story is, her maiden name, last name is Williams. My last name was Williams. She always promised her father she would hyphenate. Met me, so Williams, we're W2.
Boom.
And so Theo Williams, I'm a bad man, just to say so myself. Nicole, she's a bad woman. Together, we bad. But sometimes we get together and we bad.
Well, I was looking at our mantra: 2 hearts, 2 minds, one
vision. That's our mantra: 2 hearts, 2 minds, 1 vision. But that's a process. It sounds good on paper. The product is great: 2 hearts, 2 minds, 1 vision. But every now and then we're 2 hearts, 2 minds, 2 visions. And when you have 2 visions, you end up sometimes having division.
Yeah, division, and you get out of focus and you get a headache.
Blurry vision, exactly. And so, because we're so talented apart, every now and then when we come together, we clash. Mm-hmm. So the clashes that her and I have when we work together would be no different than some of my brothers. I have several brothers, not biological, but cats who I consider my brothers. A couple of us, we get together, like shout out to my brother, my best friend Ryan Fleming. We work together when we do preaching, different things, or speaking. We rarely have drama. I got some other brothers because we're talented, mm-hmm. We're alphas, and it doesn't say that Ryan isn't talented, but Ryan has a more sweet spirit about him in terms of, hey, I get in where I fit in. And so when it comes to some of my other brothers, we may clash. So that's natural. Mm-hmm. Alphas clash. And we've had several times in the past where the product of us working together, whether it's mm-hmm. doing drumming stuff, turns out perfect. Great product. We're assuming this podcast is going to turn out well, but the process can be kind of
I remember when we've done trainings together. Some of you have been privy to that at Bethel University.
Yeah, we did some trainings there.
North Side, or North.
We did the.
We're not calling out to just be putting it out there, but we do trainings.
Neighborhood association.
Yes, and so it was just like, okay, how do we bring, one of twin powers activate? How do we bring the synergy of what we do so it doesn't doesn't become toxic, that we want it to be the best thing ever. And so this has been a learning experience. This is his realm, as far as this whole podcast thing. But I'll just say it's been a learning experience and leave it at that, and saying hopefully throughout the weeks that we will learn from each other. We will glean from each other and become
Yeah.
stronger because of it.
I think that's great. And so we've kind of touched on some of the things we've been doing. One of the things we want to do is on Facebook, when you watch this first episode, we want you to chime in. What are some of the things you're doing? Also, if you have any questions or comments about the podcast and things you want us to cover, make sure you're adding that to these comments on these videos. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about more about how to be effective as far as quality time together. And we're not just talking about intimacy yet. We're just talking about quality time together, quality time apart. How do you respect each other? Because I think that's very important. So we'll see you right after this break. Welcome back. Hopefully you enjoyed that miniature clip. And what that clip was supposed to communicate is there's this balance, right? We got some time on our hands, and the guys want to spend time doing what they want to do. The women want to spend time doing what they want to do. But we can't forget our spouse. So what's the balance? How much time is good being together? How much time should you have apart? We believe in quality time together. We believe in quality time apart. And that gets easier to determine when you have schedules. You're at work, I'm at work. When we get home, here's quality time together. But what happens when the schedule is blurred like it is now? How do you find that lines? And so I'm going to have Nicole just share briefly some examples of how we've tried to navigate those lines. And then we're going to share with you some best practices that we've either heard from some of our friends or that we've put together in terms of our relationship, quality time together, quality time apart.
Well, I definitely share a little bit about this earlier, as far as like the professional aspects of our work.
Yes.
And so when Theo has his professor hat on or his pastor hat on, I know like I can't be walking around the house all loud and singing and all the other stuff. And so I'm being mindful of his space that he needs. And he knows when I go down into the study, into our office, that the door is closed to respect that. And so so I take that time as my quality time. Like, it's just like when you may have kids who's taking a nap. That's your time to either take a nap or get whatever your quality time is. So I take that time to read a book, to just veg out, to just call some girlfriends or whatever I think that needs to be done. So when we do have that same time together in the same place, in the same space, that we could be there, present for each other. And so I think that's what I do as far as that goes.
Yeah, for me, I was just thinking as Nicole was just sharing about taking advantage of different times. I have some brothers of mine who we all do spoken word and rap, and we meet via Zoom, but we meet at midnight. And people may think that's strange that we're meeting online at midnight, but part of that is hopefully it has allowed us to do our work, because all of us have jobs. It's allowed us to spend quality time for our spouses, but now we're able to spend time with our brothers, but we're not cutting into that time. And so by midnight, she's normally asleep by then.
But but a couple of times I heard them flowing. I had to peep my ears.
Yeah,
Woke
she be
up.
trying to eavesdrop in our cipher. You know, she know we got bars. She wants to be a rapper, and so she be trying to steal my bars. And so, yeah. So, but that's just small things of how do you be mindful of saying, I still want to accomplish this thing, but I'm not going to do it at a time that may cut into our time. Even for us with this podcast, we're releasing the episodes at 8 p.m. and we went back and forth between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. and different times, trying to be mindful of what might you be doing at that time. But the beauty is they're recorded so you can watch it at your leisure. But I think that's important that we take advantage of the quality time together, the quality time apart. And it's important that what may have worked on Monday may not work on Wednesday.
Yeah, your needs may be different.
Yeah.
And so you have to communicate, like, babe, I need some more. You know, can we hang out and do this? Because you can't hold your spouse accountable to something that you haven't shared with them. It's after they know, like, you know, just make a concession. You know, like, babe, could you make some kettle corn? Hint. Kettle corn, popcorn, and can we just watch a movie tonight? Or I'm Avenged Out. Can we just be watching Masked Singer or some of the shows that we like or whatever it is? You have to articulate the need. You can't assume that your spouse knows what you need at that time. So that's very unfair to do. So because you haven't been around this, we haven't been around each other this much since we were on a mission field.
Yeah.
And so we were literally with each other 24/7. And I had to find my own niche, my own ministry in a different part of where we were living in Kingston, Jamaica. And Theo was a professor at a theological seminary. We still had our work to do, and when we came together, it was all good. And so in this case, I'm still working my business. He's still teaching. And so we still need to make sure that we are having those boundaries for our professional. And there's some recent research. I've been actually studying this about like how it has been a very blurred line as far as personal and professional. And we are getting burnt out at home because there's no definitive line. Okay, this is my workspace, my work, and then home. And so with that, it's the same thing. We have to be so intentional, y'all. Please make sure you have those boundaries because you don't want to go back to work more fatigued than more fatigued from what you've left. And so we want to go back to our respective jobs and responsibilities fueled and refueled and ready to go with fire. We don't want to, we shouldn't have to need a vacation from all of this stay in place.
Yeah, and then the last thing we'll conclude in this particular section is when Nicole was talking about we're having to make adjustments. So maybe one day, whatever time we spent together, that was adequate. We can't fall in the trap of thinking, well, that's adequate for the next day. Things change because we change, so our needs change, and so we can't be like, well, yesterday half an hour was good for you, now you want an hour. You know, I didn't get the memo. But it also reminded me of how we even define quality time. You know, what does that mean? You know, okay, we were in the same room together on the couch doing our own thing. And now you want to spend more time? We were just on the couch together for the last 10 hours. Well, that's not necessarily quality time. But once again, we can't impose our definition on someone else. And so it's up to the other person to make known to their spouse, here's what quality time is to me. You know, I was texting back and forth with one of my brothers, and we were talking about in terms of spouses who try to connect with each other by doing small just because things. But unbeknownst to them, the thing that I'm intending, this just because thing to communicate, maybe communicating something different to my spouse because maybe it's not their love language.
I was about to say this.
And so, yeah, and so they're trying to connect. I'm doing these things to connect, but it's not connecting. And then the next day you said, we should connect more. And I'd be like, I just sent you 10 notifications about Marvel movies. That was connecting. Well, that's not what connected with her. So I think how we define that is important. But the communication. You got to be verbalizing to your spouse that, hey, when we do these things, and make it like simple. We used to talk about deposits and withdrawals.
Yeah. Love. Yeah.
When you do this thing, here's a deposit. When you do these things, here's a withdrawal.
And with that, it might have changed. Like if your love language up until this COVID-19 was quality time, you're like, I'm full. I need something else. And so it may change during this time. Acts of service, the fact, like I said, that Theo has to go out and do the grocery shopping, and unfortunately our washing machine is down, so he's had to go to the laundromat. I mean, that fills my heart. And so the love languages and what you need may change. And so again, stress the what you need at that time or don't need as well.
And the last thing we'll say in this segment, just going off what Nicole said, things do change. So think about when you had your normal work schedule, maybe the weekend was the time for play, was the time for individual play or joint couple play. Well, what happens when now every day almost seems like a weekend to a certain extent? The thing that used to hold a lot of weight, like we can't wait till Friday to do this thing, but maybe you did that on Monday and Wednesday, so now on Friday you can't wait to not do that thing, And so it's an interesting dynamic that our go-to moves may have grown stale because the thing that was once put on a pedestal, reserved for special occasions or the weekend, now has become mundane. So how can we think outside the box to keep things fresh?
Yeah, how to keep it fresh. I know. Hopefully you got your pen and paper out because we're going to talk about how to keep things fresh. Y'all. I know what y'all thinking. I see you smirking and laughing.
Actually, that's actually a good segue.
Okay.
Keep things fresh. So check out this video. Yes, so we want to welcome you back for that video. Hopefully it wasn't too risque, even though it really wasn't.
That tagline though, I mean.
You know.
Wow.
Hey, you got to keep it clean to get dirty.
I didn't know that was there, so
Yeah,
it's like dropping all types of stuff on.
Yeah, I added that in because, it makes sense. And so what we want to do now is talk, practically speaking, about the importance of taking advantage of this time in terms of intimacy. And the reason why we use the word intimacy and not sex, because we're not just talking about sex, although that could be a big part of it. It's just a big part of being married, a big part of renewing the covenant, a big part of connecting with each other on a level that you can't connect in other ways. And so...
Oh my gosh, my parents are watching this and feels like...
Hey Dad, hi Mom, how's it going? Hey, we all adults here, you know, hopefully.
I guess after
Yes.
17 years, we can talk about this. Mom, go to the other room. Jose, go ahead.
Yes, and if you're young, underage, a couple of years, I guess. So, the main thing we want to really touch on is the fact that what are realistic expectations? Because on one hand, maybe the work schedules previously, the COVID, the busyness, which leads to fatigue, or maybe some of the stress and drama has taken a negative toll on your love life. And then ideally, maybe now some of those stresses that you got at work, you don't have anymore. Or maybe some of the fatigue you got from working 12 hours a day, you don't have anymore. So now there's this expectation that was the only reason why we wasn't getting intimate. So now that we got this time, it just makes sense that, you know, we should be getting a little bit closer, a little bit more often, you know, so what's going on? And hopefully it is like that. But we also want to look at the flip side of what are realistic expectations, because maybe this newfound schedule has exposed some things, caused some, I can't wait to get away from you. The last thing on my mind right now is intimacy. So, Nicole, let's talk about a conversation we were having recently about the difference between men and women in terms of, and we don't want to overgeneralize. This is maybe an overgeneralization, but we're talking about from our experience and conversations with some of our friends. But we were talking about how men and women can compartmentalize when it comes to sex.
Yeah, men could totally, from our conversations, and we both agree, the men, we could have like a really hard conversation with our spouse, you know, a lot of tension, and a man would still want to be intimate with his wife. And the wife was like, I don't even think so. Like, dude, don't even touch me because we haven't resolved this issue over here. And so if you agree, just put amen in the comments at the bottom. But just the fact that there are still emotional expectations from women and also men. We don't, like you said, we don't want to just generalize. But that we have to be so in tune to how our spouse is thinking, especially when it comes to intimacy. And I'm going to just, the quote that our pastor at the time, Pastor Hamilton, when we got married, he told us that foreplay begins in the kitchen.
Yes.
And he meant by, you know what, making your wife or spouse, you know, tea or coffee in the morning, having breakfast and stuff like that. So the intimacy begins, is throughout the day. It is not right before you want to have this. My parents are watching this, you know, relations.
Yeah, I think it's interesting hearing Nicole talking about we can't have sex right now because there's no resolution, where some of our guys may be thinking, well, I'm trying to get a resolution right now. You know, this is the resolution. But I almost equate it to men, I think, more so than women. And women out there, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Fellas, you can chime in if I'm right.
Please do, chime in.
We seem to have a capacity in our male friendships to where we can get into a heated debate, even an argument, maybe even almost come to blows on the basketball court. But if the plan was to go eat afterwards, we'd be like, so I see you at 3 o'clock for lunch? Yeah, boom. It's like, how did y'all just do what y'all just did and then hit the switch and pick right back up so we can compartmentalize? Like, yeah, we just had this tension, we just had this adrenaline rush and this testosterone, but we can compartmentalize and say the plan was still to meet up for lunch. Well, maybe at the beginning of the day, my plan was for me and her to get together at night. She may not know the plan, but that was my plan. As far as I'm concerned, the plan is still on. Regardless of what has happened throughout the day, I'm not deviating from that plan unless, you know, I have no choice but to deviate from that plan. But I'm going to at least try to see if the plan can still be enacted. But practically speaking, history tells us that probably isn't going to jump off.
Especially the amount of time that we are spending with each other. It's just, we have to be, I've said this probably 3 or 4 times already on this podcast. This is the intentionality.
Yes.
So something that just came to mind is, okay, those of us who have to put on the face, you know, for your Zoom meetings and all that stuff, we have to be intentional. We want to look a certain way when we get on camera. Ladies and gentlemen, you should also be so intentional as far as,
Yes.
you know, taking your shower, making sure you groom your hair. If you don't want to do it all, you know, find a nice band or something. Just still make yourself presentable. And don't, you know, I'm just keeping it real. Like, our usual attire around the house is we both have like these these black robes, and we're just chilling.
And I would wear my robe at work if I could. It's real comfortable. I love my flip flops and my robe. I'm good.
But I was thinking about how I get all glammed up when I have these phone calls, and I'm just like, I don't do that during the regular day, you know, some other days out the week. And I'm like, you know, Nicole, you need to kind of step it up. So to everyone, not just the ladies, but everyone needs to step up. Make sure that you're taking the same intentionality as far as hygiene.
Yeah, that's important.
Totally is important.
That's very practical. We see movies. In the movies, you can be at the club, you dancing, you sweaty, you funky, and all of a sudden there's a sex scene. That's not how it happens in real life. You know, it's like
I hope y'all laughing because this is the truth. You know the truth.
Yeah, you gotta freshen up. You gotta be fresh. You know, so it's like, as the tagline says, you gotta get clean in order to sometimes get dirty. So all we're saying is there's new schedules, and we get that. But there's a mindset that says, what's the familiarity? What's some things that we can make sure we're not slacking off on?
Yeah, becoming complacent in.
Yeah, complacent. That's a good thing. If we put on for everyone out there, we give them our best. Because she gets glammed up for her Zoom. I make sure I try to look presentable when I'm doing my classes, or especially my sermons. Well, how much more so for each other? And so that may be one of the bottom lines is, we can't just give our best to everyone else. Giving your best starts at home. Far as how are we ministering to each other? How are we being mindful of each other's needs? And being realistic, you know, because once again, guys, maybe, and even some women, we don't want to just group everyone together. We may fall into this trap of thinking, we got all this time. You can't tell me you've been working hard all day because I saw you on the couch. You should have some energy. It should be on and popping. Well, there's all these things going on that may be unbeknownst to us. So hopefully, this is the hope. We're hoping the love life has taken an uptick.
And when we say love life, we also, you know, like you said earlier,
Yeah,
not just about
not just sex, but the
intimacy,
whole love life.
keeping it fresh.
Hopefully everything is taking an uptick. Yet we also realize that isn't to be necessarily expected to be sustained every day, every week. There needs to be realistic expectation, and one of the words that keep coming up is communication. Maybe 1 week, X amount of times of spending quality time together is good.
Which quality time?
Now we're talking about any type of quality time, but we're really talking about the quality time.
The quality
Yeah.
time?
Maybe the next week that changes. But the communication is important because expectations are important. And when things come up, can you be flexible? Can you be flexible with each other? And I think that's important. And so we want to shift one more time for this final episode. And we just want to talk to you briefly about some logistical things and some ways in which you can get involved. So we'll be right back in one short moment. Yes, so welcome back everyone. This is the final segment. We just want to do a couple house clean logistical things to let you know about some things going on in the future. First thing I want to talk about is a segment that we're going to have starting next podcast called The Jar. And it's literally going to be this jar that we have, and we're going to fill this jar hopefully with some questions from you all, maybe some comments, maybe some stories you want to share. And we're going to have a segment at the end of the next episode where we pull out some of these questions, comments, stories, and we share them, and we'll discuss them, maybe give a little feedback. But it's the opportunity to really get you involved, We want this to be interactive. We're not the experts. We're not the end all be all. So we want to hear from you all. And so if you be so kindly, when you go onto Facebook, you're going to see a section on there, a photo that says the jar. Underneath that section, in the comment section, just drop us a question or a comment in a story, and we'll try to share as many of those as we can going forward. And now Nicole's just going to brief us on a few other logistical things we'd like you to know about.
First of all, before I get into that, have you noticed that it's been a nice conversational flow between back and forth? You know, we didn't even script that. It's just been happening naturally. That's what happens when you try to communicate better. Listen.
Yeah, back and forth. Shout out to Aaliyah.
So, with that being said, we hope that you've enjoyed what you viewed this evening and that you would like it, as well as share this video with people that you think could benefit from it, as well as comments. Like I said, you know, comment on X, Y, and Z. Please comment. We want to reiterate that we don't have all the answers. We will be married 18 years whoop, whoop, in October. And so we're still learning. We're still gleaning.
Yes.
And so we would like to hear from you directly and to let you know that our next podcast will not be next week, but the following week. So in 2 weeks, and we will be sure to put up updates. And knowing my creative husband, I'm sure he'll put something on there during next week to kind of like a little baits and a little teaser for what's going to be what we're going to be talking about the next time. So we hope again that you will like our page, share this as much as possible. We're not expecting to be rock stars. We just want to do this really to just be a source of inspiration and encouragement, and to just be, even though we talk about God in some capacity, that we want to be a light in the midst of this really dark time. And so again, comment, get in touch with us, and let's keep it going.
And lastly, when it comes to sharing, although this podcast is primarily targeting married couples, maybe you're a single mom, maybe you're a single dad, maybe you're just someone who's thinking about relationships, maybe you're just looking for something healthy to view.
Yes.
The viewing, sometimes you watch these TV shows, you're like, oh, can't watch that, oh, can't watch that. And so don't just think that this is only for married couples. So maybe you have a single friend who you know would just enjoy having a few laughs, or maybe they're thinking about getting married and maybe we've shared some tips that could be helpful. So just share with as many people as you can. So we're challenging you all. Share, share. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. In between then, please get those comments, get those questions, because we really want to make sure that we're customizing these shows to benefit as many as you as possible, as well as to benefit ourselves. We're also learning during this process. And so once again, it has been Theo Williams and
Nicole Williams.
And we are W2. So stay tuned for episode 2 of Cooped Up with W2. We out of here. Peace.